Hello friends, I'm happy to welcome you to the hollylolly channel. Today we will look into a place where tourists don't always look. In Japan there is one unspoken but all-powerful rule. Never stand out, don't be too bright, don't be too cheerful, don't be too much yourself, be like everyone else. Here, normality is not just a word, it's a status, protection, and sometimes even an obligation. And for trying to be special, one can pay dearly. Not only with reputation, but also with health. Why are Japanese people taught from childhood to be normal? That is, like everyone else? Where does this obsession with social invisibility come from in this culture? And what are the consequences if you step beyond these boundaries? Today, I will tell you with facts, stories, and deep respect for Japan, not to judge, but to understand the reasons for such collective behavior. Friends, before you start watching this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and if something interests you, perhaps write a comment. Individuality is not in elementary school. The upbringing system of don't stand out starts not at work, but exactly in elementary school. Here, everyone has the same backpacks, strictly regulated rendoseru as they are called, identical dark blue umbrellas, identical white socks, underwear, and even black hair ties. Others should simply not exist. For girls, the skirt is strict, it must be below the knee. For boys, the haircut must show the ears. And if a girl's hair is longer than her shoulders, it must be tied into a ponytail, neatly and not flashy. What is forbidden in Japanese school? It is forbidden to dye hair, curl hair, use colorful hair clips, wear perfume, and in general to look brighter than allowed. Now I want to tell you one story that shook Japan and Osaka in 2017. A schoolgirl in Osaka, whose natural hair color was chestnut, faced strict demands. She was forced to regularly dye her hair black, despite medical confirmation that her color was naturally chestnut. Because of frequent dyeing, her hair became very damaged, and constant pressure from school and teachers led to a psychological breakdown. The girl stopped leaving the house, and her parents sued the school. After this case, a public scandal broke out. Schools began to demand that children with naturally non-black hair provide medical certificates confirming that their hair color is indeed natural or that the structure is curly and not straight from birth. Yes, you heard right. If you have naturally wavy or brown hair in Japan, you must prove it with documents. Otherwise, be like everyone else. I want to note that this is not in every school, but in most schools it is exactly like this. And if you decide to refuse to participate, for example in morning exercises or in some school festival, it will be perceived almost like a rebellion. You break collective harmony, and in Japanese culture this is one of the most terrible sins. Next, I wanted to talk about group thinking. The group is more important than the individual. In Japan from childhood they instill the idea you are part of the group, not its center. This is manifested in everything, from school events to job hunting. Shukatsu is the path to normality. The job search process for university graduates is known as shukatsu. It is a strictly regulated system where applicants are expected to conform to certain standards. Appearance: identical black suits, white shirts, minimal accessories, black shoes. Men must have short hair. Women must tie their hair back. Hair must not be dyed, and makeup must be minimal. Interview behavior. Let's talk about it. There must be a mandatory smile. Whether you like something or not, you must smile. The voice must be clear and loud. Standard answers to expected questions. Not how you think, but how they expect in advance. There must be emphasized politeness and respect for hierarchy. It is expected that the candidate will be ready to merge into the company's corporate culture. Let's look a little into the historical context. The shukatsu system was introduced in 1953 by Keidanren, the leading business association in Japan, to simplify mass hiring of graduates during post-war economic growth. Now let's talk about the social consequences. Failure to meet expectations can lead to social isolation. Those who did not get a job immediately after university are called shushokuronin, samurai without a master. This carries a negative connotation. Refusal to participate in collective events or expressing individuality is perceived as breaking harmony, which in Japanese culture is considered a serious offense. If you are not like everyone else, you are excluded. In Japan, refusing to be like everyone else is not just strange, it is a potential threat to the system that is held together by unity, predictability, and general silence. Shushokuronin literally means a samurai without a master, a person who failed to find a job right after graduation. He is compared to a homeless samurai who has lost the meaning of life. Such a person is considered unreliable, not in the system, which means socially suspicious. In a culture where a clean and smooth path is more important important than achievements, untimeliness is a stain. Refuse to participate in shukatsu? You are unserious. Didn't fit into a company the first time? Then you are strange. Want to try a startup or art? Do you even have responsibility? Why does this happen? The roots are in a 1,000-year history. The Japanese are a deeply social nation, where the group is more important than the individual. This is connected with the agricultural way of life. That is, the community was the means of survival, the period of hunting and gathering, where success depended on coordination of actions, and the hierarchical system of samurai, where loyalty was more important than opinion. If one lags behind, the hunt fails. These behavioral patterns did not disappear. They became cultural norms. That is, they became ingrained in the system, in the country. So anyone who sticks out like a nail must be hammered down. Let's move on to what it means to be normal in Japan. To be normal is not to be ordinary. It is a strictly defined way of life that society considers acceptable and safe. Let's look at a kind of checklist of a normal Japanese person in the eyes of society. Work must be full-time, preferably if you work in an office. Clothes must be in calm colors, neat, tidy style. What about emotions? Emotions must be moderate. Not too cheerful, but not too sad either. Behavior? You must be polite, quiet, and predictable. Attitude? There must be respect for hierarchy and elders, even if you disagree. And in the family? In the family, it is better to live by schedule. Wedding, children, mortgage, not too early, but not too late either. The formula of normality in Japan is predictability, reliability, social invisibility equals the ideal member of society. That is, you don't stand out, you don't conflict, you don't create any inconvenience for others. In such a system, being normal means being as invisible as possible. And the more invisible you are, the more paradoxically successful you are in the eyes of society. Let's talk about why Japanese people are so afraid of standing out. If in Western culture being yourself is a virtue, in Japan being yourself is a challenge to the system. The historical fear of breaking harmony here has become not just the norm, but a mechanism of survival. The roots of this fear are in culture and religion. Shinto, the traditional religion of Japan, teaches being in harmony with nature and society. That is, more important than individual will. In Japanese ethics, there is no focus on personal truth. It is more important not to cause problems for others. There is even such a term in Japanese, meiwaku o kakenai. From childhood, Japanese people absorb. You are not alone, you are part of the collective. If you stand out, you endanger everyone. Don't break harmony, don't make waves. Don't be the nail that will have to be hammered down. And what if you are different? If you are different, then you are a threat to the collective, even if not out of malice, simply because you don't fit into the overall scheme. That's why in Japan, people with mental disorders often conceal diagnoses, don't seek help, so as not to bother anyone. Many representatives of the LGBT community often hide their orientation even from family because they are afraid of losing a normal face. Nonconformists, artists, gyaru, tattooed people, they fall into the category of abnormal. Even if you just wear pink hair, you cause social discomfort. And now let's talk about the ground underfoot, literally. Japan is a country built on unstable geology and collective discipline. Everything literally rests on a fragile balance. Japan occupies only 0.28% of the land on the entire planet, yet it has 7% of all active volcanoes. And the country stands at the junction of 4 tectonic plates out of 10, and more than 20% of all earthquakes stronger than magnitude 6 occur in Japan. On average, every year, Japan is hit by numerous typhoons, and 70% of the territory is mountains and slopes. And what does this mean? Survival is possible only together, and only when everyone acts in unison, silently and according to instructions. That's why don't stand out, because if you stand out, you are a threat in case of some natural disaster. If at a critical moment, one person acts selfishly, refuses to evacuate, doesn't obey, starts arguing, then he can endanger the whole group. And here is the deep explanation of Japanese group pressure. This is not strictness for strictness' sake, but collective protection from chaos and destruction. Let's talk about the consequences of the culture of normality when the mask becomes reality. In Japan, the pursuit of being normal is like a second suit, your mask. Only, it's not worn in the morning, but essentially for life. But the longer you wear this mask, the harder it is to remember who you are without it. This is one of the most painful sides of Japanese society. Everything looks beautiful on the outside, but inside it is anxious and empty. Let's talk about superficial communication in Japan. People rarely say what they really think. Conflicts are not voiced, they are always silenced in Japan. You must smile even if you are in pain. Words like "I'm tired," "I feel bad," "I'm lonely" sound like a social malfunction. You seem to have a job, colleagues, acquaintances, but no real connections. And let's smoothly move on to the topic of hikikomori, that is, anxiety, emotional withdrawal. More and more people, unfortunately, go into voluntary isolation, becoming hikikomori. Emotions are not lived through, they are suppressed until they turn into anxiety, apathy, or panic attacks. Men learn to hold on, women not to create problems. As a result, no one can simply relax and be real. Let's talk about mass addictions as a way to survive. And by the way, if you haven't yet watched my video about addictions in Japan and what they are, then later follow the link and please watch it. When you can't feel, you need to somehow endure this normal life. Work becomes an addiction. People can't stop even if they are sick. Alcohol is one of the few acceptable ways to rest. Shopping, especially cute, soothing things, gives a brief moment of joy. Even food sometimes becomes a kind of addiction to feel alive. But this is not a solution. These are ways not to break completely. And yet there are those who break the system. Japan is a country where politeness and restraint have become true art, where being normal means being part of the general rhythm, where restraint is considered strength and emotions a risk. If someone smiles in the subway, it is perhaps not joy, but precisely the effort not to disturb the silence. But among all this restraint, harmony, some still begin to sound differently. These are teenagers, for example with bright pink hair, who go against the uniform and against the pattern. These are street designers in Harajuku who create clothing as protest. These are office workers who decide to quit a normal job in order to finally breathe. These are feminist communities who carefully but persistently search for their I inside this we. Yes, they are often condemned, yes, it is really not easy for them, but they exist and there are more and more of them. For us, who look at all this from the outside, it is easy to say, why are they so quiet? Why are they afraid to just say no? All as if cut from the same stencil. But if we look deeper into a country where tectonic plates move from 4 sides, where typhoons and earthquakes happen every year, where life is only possible when everyone adjusts to one another, then we will really understand this is not just culture, this is a way to survive. In a world where the slightest carelessness can destroy an entire house, the desire to be normal is not weakness. It is an instinct not to cause hatred, not to interfere, not to expose others. And yet, even in this system, flowers are born, quiet artists, stubborn dreamers, humble revolutionaries, those who break the norm with kindness and thus move Japan forward. Thank you for being with me. If this episode made you think, please like, subscribe to the hollylolly channel, and write in the comments whether you have ever felt the pressure to be like everyone else and what helped you preserve yourself. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next episodes. And may your individuality be your superpower. Bye bye!